Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Thanks to the magic of electricity, welcome to your Daily Detroit. Coming to you from east of Woodward, I'm Jer Stays.
And west of Woodward, I'm Devin O'Reilly.
It is Friday, September 2nd, 2022. It's good to be back podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, the power outage has been a lot for some people, a lot for a lot of people. It was so spotty, though, Jer. You know, I didn't feel really any of it, but looking at these maps, it was just kind of like polka dots of outages everywhere.
Yeah, it was like a mosaic of mayhem.
Yeah, sure. That's a good way to put it.
Kind of what I tweeted out, and that actually got picked up by Outlier Media in their newsletter. So thank you for that. But yeah, it was kind of like a mosaic. I mean, if it weren't so like painful, it'd be pretty. With the reds and the yellows and everything else.
So what did that mean for you, Jer? How did you hold up?
Basically, it slowed me way down. This is the reason why we have not been in your feed since Monday, is because there's basically no way to have a full show with like a generator going in the background and then having to juggle all the things for just keeping like the world going. It basically made everything impossible. And then it also inconvenienced the rest of the team. I mean, I'm glad it missed you, but the rest of the team got hit pretty hard too. You know, and it's all the little things. Yeah. It's the everything takes longer to drive to because there's trees down. When this storm hit, I was actually at Marygrove and there was a tree that fell down there. And then when I pulled out, there were already trees across 6 Mile. And my whole drive down, the lodge was flooded, like this whole thing. And I learned it was called a gust-nado in some areas.
Yeah, I think a few people did learn about that through a stunning visual that went kind of viral there, right?
Yeah. They caught it up in Macomb County. But I mean, you know, aging electrical grid mixed with 70-mile-per-hour winds equals mess. And it's going to be a mess every time. DTE says that 80% of the 266,000 customers that were hit will be back online sometime today. As we're recording this, about 100,000 are out. Here's the thing, and we're going to dive into this a lot more in other episodes. Like, this isn't the day to do it before, you know, the Labor Day holiday and whatever. But I think there's a lot to talk about grid resiliency, about climate change. Like, there's just a bunch of things that in other episodes, you know, the show will get into. But you know, it's just kind of tiring. You know, last year I was out for 4 days and that sucked.
I remember that. That got you. A lot of it depends on where you're at. Like you just said, the trees, how they're positioned, but definitely things seem to be taking it up a notch these days, Mother Nature wise. She's either angry or exacerbated or I don't know, but it's been pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure. You know, with serious stories, like there's an August checkout, you know, like I don't know if you've noticed this, but over the years I've kind of found like Metro Detroit has this rhythm where the summer gets really slow for things. And then the second we hit Labor Day and pass it, like all the lights turn on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're talking events that have been kind of delayed for a while, events that have been scheduled for years on the books or months on the books. I mean, I know personally and professionally, and on you too, Jared, like this fall is going to be super busy, but exciting. There's going to be all sorts of stuff going on.
For sure.
Well, with all the mess and outages and such, Jared, did you manage to make it anywhere this week? I would hope that you did, given you couldn't really hang out too much at the house.
Well, the thing I got out to was actually before everything hit. Last weekend, I managed to get to, and I did not plan this, but it happened to be on the 1-year anniversary of the Mid-8 Deli in Livonia, and it's called Mid-8 as it's on 8 Mile at Middlebelt. And I want to mention, Westsiders, I've noticed this, and maybe you can speak to this. Like, I see Tell Ford in the Dearborn area, Mid-8. Like, on the west side, that seems to be a thing. On the east side, there's no Morwar. Right? For Maross and Warren, right? There's no more like Cadwar or whatever. Like that just isn't a thing on the east side or Connor and like Conmac. Like that just isn't a thing.
Well, maybe it should be. I mean, it's such a great way to describe exactly where you are. Hey, where is this place? Well, it's at the Ford Tell is at Ford and Telegraph. I mean, Telegraph actually gets to do that a lot. I know a lot of places that either have like Tell at the beginning or Tell at the end. Tell 12 Mall, you know, people might know that. A little farther up, Telegraph. So yeah, that is a thing to combine them. But I do like the idea of Mid-8 because as soon as you said it, I was like, that's a weird name. But nope, that I know exactly why that's it because it would make sense. It would be at 8 Middlebelt. So outside of the interesting name, how was the Mid-8?
Listeners had so many recommendations for this one. Like this is one of the ones where You know, like you get one thing and it comes in, but you start getting 3, 4, 6. And it's like, all right, I got to go check this place out. You know, for me, I always try to try new places, but I tend to tie it in with if I've got an errand to do or a thing to run. I think we've talked about this before a little bit, Devin. People think we're rich. No, we're just intentional, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, you got to go get lunch. You got to go get dinner on any given day or week. You can go to your same favorite spots and keep patronizing them, which is one way to go about it. Or you can intentionally mix it up and try something different every single time. It does appear you're going to more places, but it's just the same, just a much larger variety.
Yeah, I needed a sandwich this weekend, and I either was going to get a sandwich closer to home, or while I was out in Livonia, I was like, well, I'll try this one. So, old school deli in a new shell. What I mean by that is it's kind of in a newish strip mall up there, but it's got the old school deli vibes when you get in there. There's like a lot of Faygo and Better Made and, for lack of a better term, kind of Detroit-a-Canna with like signage of like repro signs of like Ford and Red Wing stuff. And so I kind of call that like Detroit-a-Canna, right? It was good. So they have the signature monster sandwich with 7 meats. Now, a number of places have a monster, have like a version of the Ernie's monster or whatever, right? Like that is a common deli sandwich. Now, it was good, and I know a lot of people will like it because they love the stunt of 7 meats and all the fixings. I will say that my favorite was the Detroit classic, the Dentimore. I like a more simply constructed sandwich than throwing all the meats in the entire deli case. That's just not my vibe. Some people love it, and if you love it, and I've had other ones, it's good. But for me, it was the Dentimore that was the winner. And do you know what a Dentimore is, sir?
Jer, I hear the term a lot. I'm going to tell you that I do not know what a Dentimore is, but it sounds like something from the 50s.
When you eat sandwiches. I know you do.
I do, but I'm like you, Jer. I like a very simple sandwich. Why would you have 7 meats? You can't taste more than maybe 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, I ended up deconstructing it. The last half I deconstructed.
I feel like sometimes it's a way, I'm not saying this is the case, but sometimes it's a way to hide not as good, tasting the quality of the meats by putting a whole bunch of them on there. I prefer 1 or 2 meats that are done really well. Now, is that the case with the Dentimore?
Yeah. So the thing is that they don't need to hide anything. It is really good. And you got to have a signature that people are like, it's huge, right? Like that's a big Midwest thing. Whether it's the hamburger with buns made out of mac and cheese or, I call that stunt food.
Yes.
For me, the Dentimore. So that is coleslaw, melty Swiss, corned beef, and a touch of Russian dressing. It's usually on a rye. I like things on an onion roll or whatever, but I'm not against a rye. You got to have the corned beef warm and the coleslaw cold.
Right.
And that makes a great combination and a great texture to eat. It was just, I could have that sandwich over and over again. And then they were really strong with their coleslaw game. And notably,
that's important.
Winners when it comes to potato salad. That's probably one of the best potato salads I've had in years.
Really? So what do you think was the calling card of the potato salad? Because was it more of a mayonnaise-y or mustardy? So I know there's different kinds. Was it more kind of oily vinegary?
Oh, it was definitely more of the thicker kind.
Gotcha.
Right? Like definitely thick with 2 C's. But it was really good with little bits of veg in it, just enough, and then just the right size potato chunks. Like it was a really good thing. Like you got in there and, I went ahead and I ended up getting a little one with the sandwich, but then ended up getting a big side. And like the next day, I just sat there and I ate the side of potato salad for lunch. That's all I ate for lunch. And it was heaven on earth.
Well, this is still the season for a potato salad. I mean, going into Labor Day weekend, I have a feeling that many of our listeners are going to be partaking in some potato salad. I am certainly going to make sure I have some this weekend. So you've already got me thinking about it.
Well, you know what? Congrats to them on a year. It's hard to run a restaurant business. It's hard to run any business to do it for a year. And, they're making a thing. So if you're on that side of town, check them out. This is not an ad, nothing like that. This is just our experiences out in the wild. Devin, where have you gone?
Speaking of our experiences out in the wild, you and I got to hang out somewhere yesterday. Not only that, Jer, but you and I got to go somewhere that for both of us, it was our first time there.
I'm surprised I haven't been to this place yet. Friends have gone there, roommates gone there, friends who stay near me go there, but it didn't line up. And what is that place, Devin?
That is Tenacity Craft in my favorite neighborhood, Jer. I think I've talked about it, at least from a name perspective, Piety Hill.
Yes, that is the official name. I am east of Piety Hill, And they are separate neighborhoods, east and west of Woodward, even though some people will try to call it all Middle Woodward.
You're north end, obviously, and this is kind of still a little bit kind of the north end, but just farther on the west side, right?
Just north of Euclid.
I know it gets a little complicated there because, I mean, Tenacity Craft is a little bit off the beaten path, as it were, off of 2nd Avenue there, but they're not necessarily a new brewery in the sense that they started in Flint. So it already existed in Flint, and this is kind of a new Detroit outpost, which is really cool. I think it fits really into the neighborhood very well, Jer. They really embrace the old building, the Fish Nook sign that's out there. It's kind of next to like a little garden area with seating, and then it's got a really cool space inside. So we actually got to try a few different things there. You opted for one of their cocktails on draft, which I'll let you get to in a minute, but we should probably start with the flight that I hopped on there.
Sir, that was an airport.
I will say, you want bang for your buck on beer flights. Tenacity Craft is the place to go. Seriously, I mean, of all the places I've been to, you get 6-ounce pours of any of their variety you choose, and it was like $14. I mean, that is a deal, man. That is a real good deal. So I tried a little bit of everything. Their smoked Urbach was probably my favorite because I like a smoky flavor, but they had some sour beers. They had some good, nice, crisp IPAs. They're good for the season. They even had some seltzers and some ciders. So the flight was delightful and delicious. I thought they were just a brewery, so I was pleasantly surprised to see there was more to it. You actually tried the Boulevardier, right?
I did. It was on draft, which, whenever you have an on draft cocktail, you need to set your expectations properly, right? Because to me, and I'm all for a draft cocktail. I'm not against it. But the draft cocktail gives you convenience. Because, making a Boulevardier from scratch, it is a process, right? Like making a lot of things from scratch. And the nice thing is that you get standardization and all that other stuff. But man, that was a Boulevardier that kicked you in the pants.
So yeah, strong in that regard.
Yeah.
And also we tried a little bit of their bourbon. They aged some bourbon on site there. And so we got to try a little bit of their smoky bourbon, a little bit of their regular bourbon. Really nice experience, Jerry. We should also mention that they have coffee. So maybe if you're there during the earlier parts of the day, you could also grab a coffee. So, I mean, this place, I would love. It's one of those places where I would love to have this type of place in my neighborhood. You got to go a little out of your way if you're me or someone else to get there. But I will definitely be back.
Yeah. And, it isn't a Detroit drinking establishment without pheasants on the wall. These were painted, of course.
Right. That was a beautiful pheasant picture. And, I can only say good things about Tenacity. Jer only had a minor gripe. So I'll let you say what that was.
Okay. Here's the deal. Anyone who's met me who knows, like, it doesn't matter how much weight I lose. I'm a big man. Like, I'm thick. And so for me, seating is something where I pay attention to it, right? And for me, the chairs, just the way that they're super straight backed or whatever at the bar, and also some of the ones otherwise, I ended up just more standing and leaning against it because it's like hard to get comfy. And I'm somebody who's old school and I like the bar seat I can sit in and do the little spinny bit, like I am that guy. So your mileage may vary. You didn't seem to have that issue at all. And I know other people probably didn't, but for me, it's just a little touch on the side that like keeps you in there a little bit longer. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you raised the point. I wouldn't have noticed it at all. It didn't really bother me, but look, there's all sorts of different bar seats for different sorts of people. And depending if you get mismatched, you're going to find yourself in an uncomfortable bar seat. I hate the big cushiony bar seats, the ones with like the armrests and stuff on them. Those really get on my nerves.
The captain's chairs. Yeah, I'm not talking about the captain's chairs. I'm talking about your standard, simple, spinny deal.
Yeah, this was bare bones.
Yeah.
I'm not a captain's chair guy, but you are not a bare bones kind of wooden stool type of guy.
Yeah, and I'm not a captain's chair guy either. However, there is this trend of, and I'm not saying that they're doing this intentionally or whatever, but I go to a lot of newer restaurants and I see, that same chair that every restaurant has, like every restaurant that has kind of like the hipster restaurant toolkit.
Yeah.
That metal chair that is kind of like aggressive seating that's meant to like be comfortable for just a minute and then makes you want to leave so they can turn the table. Those drive me crazy. I know they're everywhere. There's nothing I can do about them. They're a very cost-effective choice and durable choice. But man, do I avoid those whenever I can.
Well, I think you're onto something, Jerry. I think we need to start, and our listeners need to start really paying attention to the seats that they're sitting on at a bar. And we need to start cataloging who has the best bar seats in Detroit.
I love that. DailyDetroit@gmail.com.
we actually hung out twice yesterday in in only the span of a few hours, which was pretty cool. But we did more of a business meeting, let's call it, earlier in the day. And we went to a little spot that you had not been to yet that I actually have begun frequenting again now that I'm working downtown. And it's the Capital One Cafe, but I think it's actually a Peet's Coffee that operates it.
Yes, it's a Peet's. I don't think we really have much of a Peet's presence in Michigan, do we? Especially Metro Detroit.
Not much of a Peet's presence here. No, Jer. It's a really cool spot, right?
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. One, I'm always a sucker for a brown sugar oat milk latte because Starbucks promised this and then they took it away from us because no place I go to ever has this stuff for it, right? Because I'm into the brown sugar thing. It's because my dad was Canadian. It's just a thing. Try it sometime. Trust me. Anyway, the winner on this to me is that patio. Right there on Woodward, right in the heart of downtown. You can see the spirit of Detroit. You can see the queue line. You can see the buildings of Campus Martius. That patio is worth the price of admission. And I think, although, you can talk more about the coffee and stuff because I've only tried one drink. I don't have enough to give a gauge on that. When it comes to situation, that placement of that patio is amazing for a coffee shop.
Yeah, I think the placement and kind of the setup is really the winner here. The coffee is great too. They don't have anything super special. I mean, at least in my opinion, like you said, they do have the brown sugar, which is great. But they're more pretty straightforward. They do have snacks and sandwiches and grab and go stuff for breakfast. That's all great. I'm a pretty straightforward coffee guy. But I do love that they have a second floor. So if you go there, walk up, they have a second floor that's glass walls, great for meetings, grabbing a coffee with somebody, meeting up, and the people watching, as you said, Jared, the people watching from the patio is fantastic. You get everything that's going on down Woodward near Campus Martius and in between Spirit Plaza. And I will shout out the staff. I go there actually quite a bit, and they just have a super, super friendly staff there that are just very accommodating, really nice. I'm glad that it's here. I'm not a Capital One customer, Jared, but I'm telling you, every time I go there and they ask when I pay, you're a Capital One customer, I keep saying no. And one of these days, I'm going to have to just say yes and join and become and get a card.
Well, you were talking about this. I looked it up. There are only 2 Peet's Coffee locations in all of Michigan. And the other one is in Grand Rapids, buried somewhere in Calvin University.
Oh, wow.
There are only 2 in Michigan at all. And in fact, you look at the map here, you've got to go to Chicago to get to your next one. And there's only a couple. It's a very small, for some reason in my mind, I felt like it was a bigger thing.
I know that I've seen them. I know that I've been to Peet's before, but I think now that I realize it, it's been more on the West Coast than the East Coast. So yeah, maybe this is kind of special. I mean, yeah, Peet's is a chain, but hey, it's not like it's anywhere else. So here's your chance to check out a Peet's Coffee.
So let's get into some news, Devin. There's some stories that I probably would have covered during the week, but OMG, WTF, wind BBQ. A week after a pair of lawsuits were dismissed by a Wayne County Circuit Court judge, Detroit's recreational marijuana licensing applications are back in business. As you're hearing this very podcast, applications are open through the 1st of October. And this really has to do with the where to go portion of things around this podcast. The first round is going to have 60 licenses. 10 of them are going to be consumption lounges, 10 micro businesses. So it's they say vertically integrate, but basically you sell and you grow your own stuff, but it's for a kind of smaller clientele, up to 150 plants, and then 40 retail establishments. Half the licenses will be social equity licenses, including city resident ownership requirements or other communities that were hurt by marijuana being legal, and then half will be open, general open licenses, kind of on the open market. They've got more info at homegrowndetroit.org. Thoughts that this is actually happening. My prediction in our Detroit was a couple of months wrong. Well, maybe it's not, depending. If they don't open by December, and I don't think they will, my prediction in our was that we wouldn't get any new of these places by the end of the year. That might still be on track, but the process is now on track.
I'm happy for that. Even as someone who doesn't necessarily imbibe, I am happy that this is happening. I thought it was a great idea in the first place. You knew when something like this comes up where there's tons and tons of red tape and legalities, it was going to be a long, drawn-out process. But what I'm happy to see is, what you mentioned is that they're really making space to be intentional about this. So there's going to be, allowing to have a certain amount of retail, certain amount of micro business, certain amount of consumption lounges to kind of keep the proliferation in check a little bit. But then also, give that priority to Detroiters because, again, we talked about this. I know that this has gotten, this was fought in the courts, but at the same time, if anybody deserves to cash in on the cannabis industry in Detroit, it is Detroiters. And you would hate to see it kind of taken over by outside forces. So I'm really, really glad that they're keeping the opportunities for Detroiters to be able to benefit and to be able to make some money off of the cannabis industry, which is just, growing exponentially in Michigan, around the country, and hopefully in Detroit now.
Yeah. I mean, the Black community was just devastated by the war on drugs, and it was disproportional impact. And so that's something that I think does need to be righted. There are other market forces going on. The price of cannabis has been dropping as of late. There have been some experts wondering if Detroit is too late with this, but something happened this week that made me realize that even if Detroit is a little bit late on the regional market, maybe it can catch up. But there's another benefit here because, I have a streak in me that's kind of libertarian, that I realize that people are going to do what they do, regardless if the government says it's legal or not, right? Like that's kind of how people are. And I hope that this helps curb the illicit trade. So this week, some people trying to make THC concentrates set their building and their pants on fire over on School Craft, thanks to a butane explosion. Now, some people say it was a meth lab. According to the police call and runs that I have seen, it was making THC concentrates, which is a difficult process. A couple people were seriously hurt in this. People went to the hospital, like not good. And there's parts of this industry that aren't just watering plants and singing songs. So when it comes to that, I think it's important to kind of change that. I wonder how many people are still illicitly selling marijuana in Detroit. I mean, I'm sure some of it will still continue, but legalizing this takes something that so many people are already doing. And on top of that, the vast majority of Detroiters want to support. It makes that legal, and it creates an opportunity for people to actually get jobs and all the other things with it. All right, this one might seem like a smaller story, Devin, but to me, I think it has a major tie-in to the whole workers and compensation conversation. We've talked about coffee shops, unionization, and all this other stuff. This isn't about a union drive, but this is kind of related. So this is the end of the line for Bunny Bunny. In an Instagram post this week, they said that September was their final month of service, and it's just not viable in its current format. I mean, viable as far as a business goes. It was founded by Jennifer Jackson and Justin Tutla. Those are very accomplished chefs. It had a varied menu that changed weekly, big international flair. When it was started, it had kind of Chinese-inspired thing, and I had it more during the pandemic when it was like a takeout thing. And they had done Chinese. I believe one of the owners had done Chinese, like a top flight restaurant in Chicago. I remember when they opened, they, like many restaurants, they had a ton of staffing issues. They talked about it on social media. I just remember seeing that in my feed over time. They kept the lights on, the food, beautiful over and over again. But here's the thing. They paid their staff. I read an article that they were paying staff $20 an hour plus tips, insurance, and vacation time. In fact, in 2020, when they opened, they were featured in Food and Wine magazine. And here's a salient quote, Devin, that I want to share with you. Quote, "Both front of house and back of house staffers are paid equally by the hour and are tipped out equally at the end of service. The idea of the profit model has to change," Tutla said. "Beyond meeting the restaurant's operating costs and payroll, Bunny Bunny aims to put all of its profits back into the surrounding community," end quote. Those are laudable goals. I also restaurants are a hard business, man. They had all the right intentions, or at least spoke the right intentions. I'm not intimately familiar with the business, but they had all these intentions and then it just didn't go.
Yeah. They're a casualty of trying to do things the right way in all aspects, in terms of quality, in terms of, compensation for employees. And, like you said, Jared, you cynically, you might wonder or say, well, this is why more restaurants can't do this, is because it's just not viable. To be able to do what Bunny Bunny wanted to do, they would have had to probably raise their prices a little bit.
Or even more. I mean, it was a premium product.
Yeah. And be bringing in a crowd on like a daily basis. They would have to be one of those restaurants that, turned over, 3, 4, 5 sittings in a given day. And they just weren't that. The food was amazing. It was delicious. Like you said, I got it a lot during the pandemic when it was takeout. It was the best pork chop sandwich I've ever had there. So the food quality was top notch. But that's a hard area too. Right off of Gratiot there, just outside of Eastern Market. That's where the old Antietam was. Collect is still there. They're going strong. But it's a really kind of outside of the, I don't know, Jared. It's like there's no neighborhood there. There's not a ton of walkability of people who are looking to get, high-end food there. It's a hard location, I'll say that. So they certainly weren't doing any favors to themselves on the location because it was hard to get there. You probably didn't have a lot of foot traffic. I think if Bunny would have been in like Midtown, for instance, in like a more heavily trafficked commercial corridor, I think they probably could have survived. But yeah, man, it's tough. And you can't fault them too much because they really tried to do it the right way. But unfortunately, this is the way it goes in the restaurant industry. But I hope that they find a way to do something, maybe similar or a different concept, but I hope they don't leave Detroit.
So there are neighborhoods near there. I mean, I will push back a little bit, but it's not the same kind of like city density that you think of when you go to a Chicago. It's like that strip has stuff there and there's Lafayette Park and things, but it's not really connected well and it's not immediate. And here's the other side of that. And you mentioned Midtown. I don't think either are one of those. I think for that, something like what they're trying to make work, you have to be near the wealthy. Being in a community where you're surrounded is just that isn't the price point. If you want to do that kind of level of turn without something like a Michelin star, right, that drives people in, is just a hard one to do. It's just hard. To me, I don't know where that works in the city of Detroit. And I wonder if the only chance it really had, which goes against its community mission probably, is to stick it somewhere where it's completely surrounded by people where money is no object.
Maybe so, Jer. I'll push back also and say that I do think it could have worked in Midtown. When I look at places that are maybe a different price point, but Ema and Shangri-La and restaurants that have been able to survive really well in Midtown. I mean, you obviously have high-end restaurants, just fine dining restaurants there too. I think there's a lot of money in Midtown between students with disposable income and with people going there for entertainment. I don't know. I think it could have worked in Midtown. It probably could have worked in, as you said, in downtown. But it is what it is. I just hope to see them again in some other iteration.
Couple quick things before we go. In a sure sign of the repair of the world, the Motor City Soul Club is back. It'll be a kind of stripped down version, something smaller, but I'm glad to see them out there doing regular things. They're a great thing before the pandemic. It's hosted in part by a friend of the podcast, Dan Austin, brings Detroiters of all kinds out together to dance. This one's going to be from 4 to 9 p.m. September 17th at Batch Brewing in Corktown. It's part of their whole like Oktoberfest, Batchtoberfest thing they're doing. Most of their events were at the Marble Bar. They did go around to different places. This is a little different, but I'm glad that they're getting out into the world. There is something special. And Motor City Soul Club describes itself as DJs spinning sultry soul, furious funk at bars across Detroit. We play a mix of underplayed oldies, all-time classics, and new discoveries, old favorites, and freshly dusted off ditties you've never heard. I will drop a link in the show notes. It's one of the fun things of Detroit, and I wanted to highlight that the world is repairing itself just a little bit to see them out there.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, like you said, you can go there and to one of these Motor City Soul Club events and hear some stuff that you have literally never heard before. Because I mean, unless you're really into music like that, like Dan is, he's going to find some stuff that you've never heard before. So that's always pretty cool and great to see like that events like this are happening and a great place to do it in Batch Brewing.
For sure. Don't forget there is a Detroit City FC home game on Saturday against Indy 11. We're on a run to try and snag a home playoff game. The DCFC store is freshly stocked. I saw that actually the other afternoon. I was in there because we did the preview of it. I'm in there now. They've got all fresh stuff, really nice. And then also there's the Hamtramck Labor Day Festival, plus a million other things happening this weekend. So if you are in town this weekend, Detroit is the place to be.
Absolutely, Jer. And make sure you eat all the coleslaw, potato salad, macaroni salad, all of your Labor Day favorites. Beef up before the fall, Jer, because we're going to have a busy, busy season ahead of us.
All right. Well, with that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Devin O'Reilly.
Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.